When we look at information, numbers, percentages, statistics, we tend to have an easier time understanding and interpreting them if they're also represented by corresponding visual cues. Kibana Canvas is a tool that helps us present our Elasticsearch data with infographic-like dashboards, fully visual, dynamic, and live. A Kibana Canvas presentation is a bit like a PowerPoint presentation. We could generate bar charts, plots, and graphs, or fully customized visualizations to showcase pertinent data that addresses specific needs. But Canvas goes way beyond PowerPoint. Kibana Canvas extracts whatever live data from our Elasticsearch cluster we need, processes it to prepare it for our visualizations, and then generates the graphical representations that we define. The first step in Canvas is to create a so-called workpad, which is basically a workspace where we build the graphical representation of our Elasticsearch data. Workpads can be composed of a single page or multiple pages. You could think of these pages as dashboards. Within the pages, we add graphical elements to represent the data any way we need to. Let's go through a few examples of the elements that Kibana Canvas has to offer. Charts, which include area, bubble, coordinate, donut, bar, and other types of charts. Shapes and text boxes that are formatted with Markdown, which is a plain text formatting syntax. Images that can either repeat a number of times based on dynamic data, or the image can be revealed based on the data they represent. Other supporting elements such as drop-down filters or time filters, which give us a way to limit what data is considered for graphical representation. For example, we can select to only include data inserted in the last month. This means we can create workpads that change their content on the fly based on user input, making it more of an app-like experience. Each element needs a way to extract the data that will be represented. The data source an element can use includes Elasticsearch SQL queries. The SQL syntax gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what data we want to pull from Elasticsearch and how we want to present it to Canvas. Temelion expressions to work with time-based data, or raw documents pulled directly from indexed documents. Everything that's happening in Canvas is driven by the custom expression language, in a similar way as Kibana Temelion. We chain-defined functions by piping results, which are also known as contexts. Piping simply means that we take the result from one function and send it to another function to be further processed. All of this gives us a lot of freedom in choosing how to extract the data we need and transform it in a way that is usable and meaningful for our infographics. Here we have an example of a custom expression for Canvas. In this example of a metric element definition, we can see that it begins with the element filters to ensure that any global filter defined in the workpad, for example a date picker, will also apply to this element. Next, ES_SQL is specified as the data source, which then defines an Elasticsearch SQL query. The math function calculates the value for the metric that will be displayed. Here it simply passes the value of count documents, which as its name implies, will calculate the total returned documents from our defined query. The next line, starting with the metric word, defines the element type we want to use along with its formatting. To get a more in-depth look at Temelion functions, check out the Core Logics article on the topic at bit.ly/Temelion, which also includes a summary of Elasticsearch SQL functions for quick reference. Well, that covers the basics of how Canvas works, so now let's learn how to create our own Kibana Canvas workpad and see what it can do for our users. So to get started with this exercise, we need to get some sample data to work with, and we'll accomplish this with the Nginx web server log provided by Elastic. And now to save you some typing, I've uploaded the commands you're going to need for this to the web, so just head on over to media.sundog-soft.com/es/canvas.txt to get this little cheat sheet here. So we'll start by downloading the log from the GitHub repository with the wget command, so let's copy that first line. Control-C, back to our terminal, right-click, and we have our data. Next, we need to convert the Nginx JSON logs file with awk to a form that can be processed by the Elasticsearch bulk API, and then the converted file is saved as Nginx JSON logs bulk. Let's take care of that. Control-C, right-click. That was quick. All right, next we need to create our index, our Nginx index, and the basic mappings that we need. We especially need to map Nginx's timestamps to a date-time format. so they can be understood and used by Elasticsearch. So let's go ahead and copy that block there. Control C, kick that off. All right, and finally we'll actually index the data using the bulk API. Note here that we're using the system version of curl because we need a custom content type here for XND-JSON. Also note that we're going to be piping this into the JQ utility. So if you don't already have JQ installed, first you need to install it with sudo apt install JQ. And with that in place, we should be able to copy and run this command to actually index our data. Control C again. And off it goes. All right, so what we're looking for is that message false in the output. That means that there were no errors. That's what that pipe to JQ looking for .errors did at the end there. So that means we're good. That's successfully uploaded with no problems whatsoever. So let's switch gears to Kibana here by just going to 127.0.0.1:5601. And if you do have more than one workspace, go to our default one here. Now in Canvas, we'll often use Elasticsearch SQL to retrieve the data for our visualizations. Now to prepare our queries and test out different variations, you can use Kibana DevTools. That's the little wrench icon here. So to do this, you just need to wrap the SQL query that you want to try in a simple JSON object and then post it to the SQL API endpoint. You also need to add format equals text as a query parameter to our post request to see the returned result nicely formatted in a text-based sample. So for this little example here that I already typed in, we can go ahead and run that and see that we got back some data. So this is a nice way to sort of experiment with your Elasticsearch SQL commands that will build up your Canvas dashboard. So let's head over to Canvas here. That's this little icon here on the dashboard. And when you're working within Canvas, when you work with an element, there'll be an expression editor in the bottom right corner. This gives us a lot more flexibility in changing how elements work. So after you get more comfortable with the expression language used in Canvas, you'll notice it's a more efficient way to work rather than using the interface and clicking on buttons and menus to edit various functionality. So let's create our first workpad in Canvas and learn how to build an infographic, kind of like the one that we see here. This is what we're going to be aiming for in this exercise. Looks pretty nice, right? So let's go ahead and create a workpad, and let's expand this window. And in the top right corner above our workpad, notice the Add Element button. Let's click on it, and it will reveal a list of available elements with clear visual representations and descriptions. So let's add a new element and pick the shape type from that list. There it is. Now we'll use this to create a green background for the right side of our infographic. Let's open the display section here and find the fill box. And from here we can use the following color code for green, the specific shade that we want. 0B974D is the color. All right, that looks nice. Now it's time to add our metrics on the right side. So to do this, we'll add a new element and select the metric type from that list. So let's start moving things around to where we want it. So we wanted this green area over here to be on the right, correct? And again, you can just apply whatever look you want here. And we're going to move this metric over here to the top. All right, and after we've dragged it to its place, we're going to change the metric and the label text color to white. So metric text will be white, and the label also white. Okay, so finally we get to the most important part, bringing in the data from our Nginx index. After we select the element we want to work with, in this case the metric we just added, we can look in the right pane of Canvas for the selected element. Now, we're going to switch from the Display tab to the Data tab. And we'll change the data source to Elasticsearch SQL. So we'll use the following SQL query, which will return the total number of documents in our index. Select count star as count_documents from Nginx. And after hitting save, we should see a warning sign on the screen. The metric doesn't yet have a source value to use as display data. So to fix this, we need to switch back to the Display tab and select count_documents as our value. Value, count documents. Right, so count documents was generated by that previous SQL query. And we should also enter the text logs to use as our label. Great. All right, the general procedure for the rest of the metrics will be the same. So let's select that element again, and on the right side here on the selected element pane, you'll see 3 vertical dots in the menu here in the top right corner. By clicking on it, we can then clone the element, like so, to quickly add similar ones. And you can also do that by simply copying with Control-C and pasting with Control-V. There's also an option for saving elements, which we find in the My Elements tab when adding a new element. So to add to the rest of the metrics, we can clone the previous one 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll add the following SQL queries under each one's data source. So for the first metric, we'll do the following. Change that to select sum bytes as bytes from Nginx. And each time we'll go ahead and change the value field in the display here. We call that bytes. And we'll change the label accordingly. Bytes transformed or transferred. All right, and let's shrink that down so we can actually see it. That's better. Go a little bit bigger. All right, that's good. And the next one, we're going to change the data to select count distinct remote_IP as remote_IP from Nginx. And again, we'll switch the value to the remote IP and change the label accordingly. Unique IPs. And lastly, we'll select that final one and change that to select count distinct agent as agents from Nginx. And map that value to the new agents value we just got from SQL. And this time we will call that label unique agents. Cool. All right, so now we're going to play with images and image repeat. So we have 2 image elements in our infographic. Let's refer back to what we're trying to build here. And we've already made this part. We're making good progress here. Let's make this little image thing here. And another image we have is the logo up here. So let's start with that logo. Now to add the logo, we add an image element and then change the link to point to the Nginx logo. So I'm just going to say add element, select image. So we will go ahead and change that image to a link at the following URL. It's nginx.com/wp-content/uploads/2018/08/nginx-logo-rgb-large.png. Let's go ahead and set that. And there's our logo. Cool. So let's shrink that down a little bit. Put it in the corner here where we want it. So next we'll add an image repeat element, and as the name suggests, this repeats the defined image for a number of times based on underlying data. Similarly, image reveal can show a portion or percentage of the image based on underlying data. So next we'll add an image repeat element, and as the name suggests, this repeats the defined image for a number of times based on underlying data. Similarly, image reveal shows a portion or percentage of the image based on underlying data. Let's get rid of this message up here. All right, so we want to go down here. Let's actually stretch this out a little bit, give us a little bit more room to work with. And let's go ahead and hit Add Element. And we want an image repeat. You can see we have sort of a sample image here that it comes with. Let's start by moving it where we want it to be. Down here. And as you can see, we're going to have like 136 of these things, so that's going to be way too big, right? So the first thing we need to do is go to repeating image and add a image size attribute. And let's change that to 18. All right, that looks more promising. And we can also change that image if we want to. So let's go ahead and use this globe icon from Wikipedia here. If you want to pause and copy down that URL, you can, or you can just stick with the default image here. That might be easier for you, but just to make it look like the thing I want it to be, I'm going to go ahead and copy that link and go to image link and paste in that image URL. And now we have that little globe icon instead. So now we need to tie it to some real data, right? So we'll go to the data tab here, click on demo data and select Elasticsearch SQL. And we want select count distinct agent as agents from Nginx. So that will give us the distinct number of agents. Save that. Go back to our display tab and tie the value to that result. And there we have it. So now the globe image should appear 136 times. Pretty cool. But there's a lot more. So now let's add the text elements. And just for reference of what we're building here, that's going to be these labels here, right? Request statistics and top 5 IP addresses. So let's go ahead and add a text element. And after inserting the first one, we'll navigate down to the display section here. And for markdown formatted comment, we're going to replace all that with simply ##. This is markdown format requests statistics -- number of requests **. Apply that. All right, let's stretch that out, shrink it down, and put that where we want it to be. And we'll make another one as well. And this one we'll replace with ## top 5 IP addresses -- transferred bytes **. And apply that. All right, so far so good. So now it's time to add those two data table elements. The first one will display our request statistics. So let's go ahead and add a data table. Position that where we want it. And we will just use the following SQL to select the data that we need. So let's go to data, Elasticsearch SQL, and we'll change this to select request, count star as count _ requests from Nginx, group by request, order by count _ requests, descending. All right, looks like it worked. And for nicer formatting, we can go to the display section here and hide the pagination and column header. So under table style, I'm going to add attributes for pagination, turn that off. And another one for the column header, turn that off as well. And now we have a little bit more room to play with here. All right, cool. Now the second table will be very similar. So let's add another data table. And for this one, we'll use the following SQL content. Select remote _IP some bytes as total transferred from Nginx, group by remote IP, order by total transferred, descending, nulls, last limit 5. All right, looks like that query worked. So the final elements we'll add are the charts. So let's refer back to what we're trying to build here. This is the picture of what we're shooting for. So you can see we actually have a bar chart over to the right of that table and a progress chart down here at the left of that table. So let's go ahead and format things a little bit better here. Make room for those. So first let's add the horizontal bar chart to visualize these request statistics from our table. Add element, horizontal bar chart, and we'll roughly position it where we want it to be. And for the SQL query, let's go to the data section here. Elasticsearch SQL, and we'll make this select request, comma, count star as count requests from Nginx, group by, request, order by, count requests, descending. Save that. And under display, we're going to add settings for the x-axis and y-axis so we can get rid of those. Make it cleaner. And we need to tie the x-axis to those values. So let's set the x-axis to count requests and the y-axis to request. And there we have a nice pretty little bar chart. Cool. So let's make that roughly the right size so it lines up with those other entries there to the left. And let's change the color as well. So under default style, click on auto here, and then we can edit the color to be that nice little shade of green. And due to a browser glitch, we have to go and save our SQL again to get that to come back in. And there we have it. Nice pretty green horizontal bar chart. So let's try taking this even further using Canvas expressions. We'll apply to a new element that will add a progress gauge chart. That's going to go down here. This progress chart will show the percentage of traffic transferred to the top 5 IP addresses. So let's go ahead and add in a progress gauge. Right about there. So after inserting that, let's go to the data section and give it some SQL. We'll say select sum of bytes as total transferred top 5 from Nginx, group by remote IP, order by total transferred top 5, descending, nulls, last, limit 5. And let's do a preview to make sure I typed that correctly. Okay, those look like valid values. Save it. And well, that query alone is not enough, and that's because the progress chart expects a single value between 0 and 1, where something like 0.56 would represent 56%, for example. So we're going to achieve what we need with the very useful expression editor. Let's click it on the bottom right corner here. And the whole expression will look like this when we're done. I'm just going to copy and paste this because it's kind of a lot. But this is going to replace what's in the math section. So I'm going to delete that mean % uptime and paste in this new line here. So go ahead and pause and copy that in if you want to follow along, or you can just watch this bit. It's okay. And when we hit run, there we have it. So that expression basically scaled things down to between 0 and 1 for us. Now we should also choose the same green color fill for the element and maybe pick a bit bigger font size or something. Go back to display here. And if we go to under progress, let's add in a progress color element and change that to green. Cool. And we can change the label font size if you want to as well, make it 36. And let's make it bold. Cool. All right. So there you have it. Congratulations. We have finally created the entire infographic example that we initially saw. And we're ready to explore the incredible capabilities that Kibana Canvas has to offer. Beautiful, dynamic, and interactive representations of your data in exactly the form your users need. Now, to make sure that we can continue with the next lesson in a clean environment, let's remove the changes that we created in this lesson. So back to our terminal here. First, let's remove the Nginx log files that we downloaded. There they are. So we'll just say rm nginx star after that to get both the logs and the bulk version. And let's remove the index where we save that sample log data. We're deleting on localhost 9200 the Nginx index. And finally, we'll remove the work pad that we created in Kibana Canvas. So to do that, we're going to go back to Canvas here and go back to My Canvas WorkPad. And then we're just going to check that box to the left here and click the delete button. And that should get us back to where we started.